Oh my gosh, we've got 2 kids. We're so overwhelmed right now. I think we've been having the sense these last couple months that our family is the perfect size, and neither of us particularly want to have another child. It's just now that we've made that choice that we're done with, growing our family. It's just the natural, I think, line of things. So yeah, it's time to do it. And if we push it off more and more, the more likely there is that an accident is going to happen. And so we just want to make sure that, we're able to make the choices that we want to, and do that in a short time frame.
Well, we talked about it way back before we even had children, about what contraception would look like in our relationship. I bore the brunt of our contraception for our entire relationship until we decided to have children. So it was a conversation of what would it look like? What would contraception look like after we have children? Would it still be me, or would you be willing, to do a vasectomy? How can we share that responsibility between the two of us?
It's time for me to take on the responsibility of contraception, because Elise has been taking it on for the last 17 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's, now that we've decided we're not going to have any more children, using these sort of stopgap methods of birth control just doesn't make sense for us. And so I think it's time to do something that's permanent and we don't have to think about, and we can just live our lives without the prospect of, what happens if, something rare or unexpected occurs.
We're really lucky to be able to have both of our children on the first try. Like, they were very much planned, and first try, we got pregnant with both of them. So because we're so fertile, like, the risk of an accident happening, I just feel like we're at a higher risk of having that accident become a pregnancy. And then, where do we go from there? And so neither of us want another child. Like, neither of us could really handle that right now. So the risk of, the options were either I would start an IUD or an oral contraceptive or something like that, or Nate gets a vasectomy. And so honestly, the vasectomy procedure is about as long as an IUD procedure. I mean, really, it's a 20-minute procedure. It's actually done robotically. It's really minor, with really minor healing. So it's, the risk is almost the same as far as like going in and seeing a provider and being in an office and being exposed to COVID. The risk of COVID exposure is pretty much the same either way,
The longer we put it off, we just don't know what's going to happen. This winter things could get a lot worse. So then we'd be pushing it off till spring or summer. And, it's just, it'll just keep getting, there's always excuses to push it off, I guess. And, we're lucky we happen to be in a place where there's not all that many cases. And so, if we were in a hot spot or something like that, we might think differently. But right now, I feel pretty safe going into an outpatient clinic and getting this done. I'll of course have a mask and keep my hands washed, and I assume they'll have protections in place.
Having been on oral contraceptives and having negative responses to those, and back when the ring was around, having negative response to that, and then getting a copper IUD placed, and then just the effects of having heavy periods with a copper IUD. But otherwise, I did really well with it. And so it's just kind of like, okay, so then what would I keep doing? Like, I keep getting IUDs placed. Like, what is really the future plan here? Do I get a tubal ligation? Honestly, vasectomy is a lot easier than a tubal ligation. All of these sorts of things. So I think I'm the one who initially brought up the vasectomy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really was into it. I mean, my whole thing was as long as I'm certain I don't want to have any more children,
Right.
then it's absolutely the way to go. I mean, there's just no question in my mind that that's what I would do once we made that decision that we were done having kids. So yeah, I think we've been talking about it for 6 years, and you know, a while, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe we talked about it, and wasn't ready to do it, and we
Right.
ended up having children, um, and then now it's just like, okay, yeah, we got to do this. Yeah, and I'm game. I'm all for it. I actually don't think I'd rather her not get other contraceptives. It's just, I feel like the risk to me getting a vasectomy is so minuscule compared to the risks of getting an IUD or oral contraception, or the risks of having an unwanted pregnancy with something like condoms or something like that. So it's to me, it's the safest with the least amount of risk involved. I guess maybe I brought it up to my parents after I decided, but I didn't talk to anyone before I made the choice other than Elise. As it's our decision, and although I guess I would be interested in what my friends and family think, I had already made up my mind. So, I wasn't really looking for advice, really. I was more just like, this is something I'm doing. And, I'm not that great about staying in touch with a lot of my friends, with two young kids, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's something I really didn't talk with a lot of people about. I did do some research online, and I've had one phone call with the doctor who's going to do the procedure, just to get some lingering questions answered. But yeah, I really haven't talked to many people about it, just because it's just a choice that Elise and I have made together, and that's really the only people whose opinion I care about. After I'd made my decision, I was talking to one of my friends over text and said I was getting it done. He said, "Oh, I already had one. And I didn't know that." Um, so yeah, it's um, yeah, but I never actually really, you know, delved into what their experiences were like. My friend mentioned to me that it was pretty minor for him, and so yeah, I just had always heard and thought that it would just be a very minor procedure with a very little amount of recoup time. So yeah. I don't really have any concerns. I know there's a very low chance that something could happen, and my recoup time would be a lot longer. I did have some questions about, like, would it change my orgasm, or, what would happen with, you know, having an ejaculation, stuff like that. And so, just sort of like more like detailed sexual questions I had for him that I wanted answered. And he, of course, confirmed to me that everything would be quite normal. Basically, very little or if anything would change in that realm. And then, the likelihood of something going wrong after the procedure is extremely low. Um, they've kind of got it down to a science now, to where it's you can be pretty assured that things are going to go smoothly, and after a very short recoup time, that you'll have the same sex life that you would before you had the procedures. So yeah, just questions that I assumed I knew the answer to, but just wanted to get someone who knew about it, get their opinion on it. And so yeah, he confirmed those things to me, and yeah, again, I went in to asking him questions very certain that I was going to get it done, and I came out even more certain. I'm going to go in there, and we're going to do like a 30-minute intake where he sort of does the whole spiel, and gives me all the paperwork I need, and preps me for what's going to happen afterwards. And answers any lingering questions I may have. That's supposed to take about a half an hour, and then the procedure will be right after that, and that takes about a half an hour as well. So the whole thing will take an hour, and I'll hopefully be in and out. And as far as the recoup time, he says it can vary from person to person, but usually after a couple of days, you feel pretty much back to normal, and about a week afterwards, you can start, lifting things as much as you normally would, and doing stuff like that. So I think our plan is, after the procedure, take a couple of days and take it real easy. Don't lift up the kids or play too rough with them, and don't do any yard work or anything outside, just sort of chill. And then as that week goes on, just sort of gradually increase what I'm able to do. And then hopefully after a week or two, I'll be able to, throw the kids up in the air and do all those things. So, yeah, that's the expectation. That's what we're hoping for. 99% of the time you're fine, but there is a risk of, passing out after the procedure, just like sometimes after you give blood, some people will pass out. It's more just a vasovagal response. Nothing has to do with the procedure. So yeah, there's an off chance that could happen. So Elise is going to drive me, and yeah, we've got 2 young kids. It's like they're on different nap schedules, and so we're trying to, we've got this whole plan of Elise is going to drop me off, drive the kids around while one of them naps, and then pick me up after an hour. Then we'll go back home to get the other kid a nap. It's just, it has to line up perfectly. It's been about 4 days now since I got my vasectomy, and I'm really completely pain-free. I haven't really felt anything bad at all go on in my body since then. I have not had to take any ibuprofen or aspirin or painkillers or anything. It's just been completely pain-free. I have had kind of like a general achiness down in my lower abdomen and scrotum area that has kind of persisted for the last 4 days. It's not too bad. I forget about it most of the day, but every once in a while I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, something major happened down there. But other than that, it's been super easy. I took it real easy the first couple days, didn't really do much but sit and lay down. And I've started to gradually increase my activity from now, and hopefully in a week or two, I can get back to things as normal. I'd say better. It was, I expected to have to take, ibuprofen for a couple days or so. But really I haven't had any pain at all. Which has been really nice because I don't deal well with pain. I have had that sort of achiness down below. That's just actually a really good reminder for me not to overexert myself or do a lot of activities. So I'm actually kind of glad I have at least some sensation of what happened down there now, because it makes me remember not to overextend myself. Yes, our insurance plan does cover vasectomy, which is very nice. And since my wife gave birth earlier this year in February, we've more than met our deductible for the year. So yeah, I'm not going to have to pay anything out of pocket for this, which is really nice and a good incentive to get a vasectomy in the same year that you have your final child, if you have children. Because that deductible can hit you. And my doctor said that if your insurance didn't cover it, it would be about $700 or $800 out of pocket, which is a big hit initially. In the long run, it's probably cheaper than having to buy condoms or hormonal birth control or something else. But yeah, that can be a deterrent for a lot of people.
In terms of the scheduling, I just had a short, like 10-minute phone consult with him initially, asked some questions that were on my mind. And then he said, well, if you really want to do this, let's come into the office. And the whole visit took about 50 minutes total. The first 20 minutes or so, we discussed some potential negative effects that could happen from vasectomy, very rare occurrences, but something that, you should keep in mind. So we discussed some side effects that could happen. He also wanted to make sure that I really, in fact, did not want to have kids anymore, because vasectomy is, you can technically get it reversed, but it doesn't work that well, and it's extremely expensive. So you should really treat vasectomy as a irreversible birth control method. And so he wanted to make sure I really didn't want to have kids anymore. And I told him the thought of having a third child making me want to curl up into the fetal position and cry. I think that convinced him. And then the final half hour was the surgery. Actually, it was a little less. It was about 25 minutes, where he just did it right there in office. And when he was done, I pulled up my pants and I walked out of the office. It was really very easy. Well, the procedure is super, I'm sure it's very complex. You need a lot of training to do it right, but it seemed very simple and easy. It was, like I said, about 25 minutes. I just pulled down my pants and sat on this table, and he laid me back. And he sprayed that whole region with like rubbing alcohol and a bactericide to make sure that nothing was still, that it was sterile. And then he took this sort of long metal gun that it doesn't have a needle, it's a hypojet. So it shoots this very concentrated stream of painkiller just subcutaneously. That was, the worst part of the procedure. And it really wasn't that bad. It was, I don't know, I guess you could sort of compare it to like, a rubber band snap in that area, which doesn't sound very pleasant, and it wasn't, but it also wasn't that bad either. So he did that a couple times around the area where he was going to, do the procedure. So there's just 2 quick jets of that, and then it was pretty much completely numb in that local area that he was working in. I could feel some like slight pressures every now and then, but no pain at all. But it went super quick, and we were just having small talk while he was doing it. It was really kind of, not that bad at all. And then, he didn't even suture the incision area. And so, there's this tiny, like, incisions the size of a pinhead there that, we just let heal on its own. I had very little bleeding, and I had to go about 24 hours before I could shower. But now I can shower just fine. The site down there looks completely normal. I can't even tell where he went in. So it was a very quick procedure. I was just sweating a lot because I was nervous, but I had no pain. And it was, like I said, I walked out of the office just fine. My mother-in-law picked me up, which I'm glad. I could have driven home, but it was also nice to, after that, just sort of chill and come down a little bit from the nervousness of it. So I'd recommend having someone pick you up from the office, although you probably don't need to. I would say if you're certain that you don't want to have kids, then it's a great thing to do. Honestly, it was just a couple rubber band snaps on your balls, and that's it. And considering my wife went through childbirth twice, I was there by her side the entire time. That's real pain, and so a little bit of slight pain for a split second to prevent that from happening again, considering we don't want to have children, is really worth it, in my opinion. And I'm not technically sterile yet, but once I get the thumbs up, it'll be such a weight lifted off of me to know that I don't have to think about family planning or birth control ever again in my life. And that's a very freeing feeling. You know, from what I understand, the vasectomy procedure I went through has not been around too terribly long. So that's one reason why I didn't want to talk to people like my dad who got a vasectomy ages ago, because it was just a very different procedure then. And so, but if I would have known people who had gotten it done more recently and probably went through the same very easy procedure that I went through, it might be nice to know their experiences, because especially if I was on the fence, which I wasn't, but if I was on the fence about it, I think it would be nice to talk to people about their experiences, because I imagine that very few people have complications that are noteworthy at all with this procedure, just because it's so simple and straightforward. I think there's a tendency in our society to shy away from talking about anything that has to do with our reproductive organs. And I think that's a real shame, because it's part of who we are. And they're very important parts of our bodies. And it's nice to be able to discuss those freely with other people. I don't know what can make it easier for a lot of people. Some people just don't feel uncomfortable talking about it, and that's okay. But if you don't feel uncomfortable talking about it, it might be nice just to strike up a conversation with people who you think might be receptive to hearing about it or listening to your story.